Ladies and gentlemen, I am back in the building for another stream. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Hopefully you done already stuffed yourself paws with a turkey and stuffing and ham and cranberry sauce and pecan pie, pumpkin pie. I think pumpkin pie is actually very disgusting, but it's your prerogative. Sweet potato pie. What else? What else? What else? Some people don't even eat turkey on Thanksgiving. People be eating fried chicken, fried fish. Some people even go higher than that and go eat seafood. Lobster and crab and crawfish on Thanksgiving. Some people got the potato salad and the macaroni and cheese, cornbread. What's that? Casserole, green beans with the pieces of ham in it. It's just depending on what family it is, But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. This is just gonna be a short stream for today. Hopefully, like I said, y'all got y'all's fill of food. Hopefully, y'all are thankful for whatever it is y'all are thankful for. I'm thankful for breathing and being on this earth. But today this is just gonna be a short stream. It's probably gonna be just an hour, maybe shorter than that. I don't want to stay on here too long. But yeah, we're gonna be reacting to a couple of things. We'll be talking about it. First and foremost, I feel like I want to talk about the No Jumper stuff, the No Jumper back on Fig community, Figmunity thing. That'll probably be like the very last thing I talk about. But for the most part, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting today. So this isn't, this ain't no podcast or nothing like that. This is just a super chill stream. So we're going to start with the Candace Owens interview. And I'm just going to be adding my commentary in between all of that. So, just to start off with the Candace Owens interview, Candace Owens is actually sitting down and having a captivating conversation with a sex worker. And this sex worker is somebody who she was on a podcast with, and basically they had like this back and forth tit for tat type of thing, and after that there were some words and things being said, but in this interview it's going to be like a captivating conversation, controversial discussion, of course, because the sex worker, she's known for basically being like a counselor, or how do I say it? A counselor or a therapist who helps people's marriages by committing the act of like sleeping with or engaging with the couples that she's, helping out with therapy sexually. So let's just get into it. By the way,
hello everybody, welcome to a special episode of the podcast. You may have seen clips circulating of me on the internet on the Whatever podcast, where I got to sit down with a fleet of sex workers.
Why are you wearing a cross on your neck?
Color coordinating with your neck?
Because I don't see a cross as religious, so
Okay.
I
Just
thought
like you
necklace
don't
was
see a
cute.
marriage as religious.
So why
It's
are you wearing the
improving.
cross?
sex
Because I think it's cute.
workers
You
are
just think
more-
that the design is cute.
Yeah.
a better
Wait,
term.
real
I
quick.
grew up
Hold on.
Catholic. I was religious, and I'm not
Prostitution.
anymore.
If you are not going to be acceptant with your partner, if he comes to you and is like, hey, I really like getting pegged, I want you to peg me, I want to know, what are you going to do? That's your
Well,
husband.
I would think that that individual would probably need therapy and not the
Facts.
kind that you give. One of them actually didn't speak that much on that particular episode, but she was featured on it, and she is here to sit with me today so we can speak more at length. Her name is Olivia Bentley, and I am very happy to have her here. Olivia, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Candace. I'm very happy to see you again.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background for people that perhaps missed the whatever clips.
I'm not even gonna lie, that like podcast or whatever, the whatever podcast, it's almost like a setup because you bring in all these women who do OnlyFans and do sex work and to like, I guess to like, you know, to like even the balance of that, you bring in like people like pastors and people who are like counselors and things of that nature who obviously do not believe in the act of sex work or anything that has to do with corn or anything like that. It's so weird. That type of like dynamic is just weird to me because you know they're not gonna agree on things, but you put them together on a panel to like, I guess, find some type of common duality sitting amongst one another, which is almost impossible most of the time. It's like it's like those conversations that are had about like politics or those conversations that are had about religion. Nobody ever wins in those arguments, you know. Whether you're a Christian, whether you sit a group of Christian people down with a group of Muslim people, whether you sit down people who are Democratic or Republican in the same room, it's always going to be one side's going to be wanting their side to be more uprooted than the other.
Or people that did not watch it. Essentially, the whatever podcast, one host named Brian, he sits down with sex workers and typically he'll have on one or two conservatives and he sort of just fosters a conversation. I was doing my documentary tour for Convicting a Murderer. We decided for me to jump onto the podcast and I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but I know that before the cameras were rolling, you said to me, "What's your agenda?" Which was an interesting question to ask me before we started rolling. So why did you ask me that question?
I didn't know what to expect either. So I knew you were there to promote your documentary as well. So I'm like, well, how is this conversation going to go at the table with this many gals? And then we've got Candace coming in to promote something. So how, where will she go with it? How will this go? And it went, and there was a lot of talking, and I'm not one to get in and really interject. I'd rather have a one-on-one, if we're going to get into something more substantive. So it was interesting, to be on the show and it was fun.
What was your overall takeaway, I guess, of everybody sitting down and the conversations that were had?
She
I
wanted to
think
agree with the
that
sex workers.
it was certainly
because she's in that work.
interesting. I think that when you have this many cooks in the kitchen and somebody saying one thing and somebody saying another, there's a little bit too much spin. And there were times it was hard to keep the subject matter focused. So maybe perhaps I was there to maybe represent a certain focal point on the sex industry, but then somebody else was there and wasn't even a sex worker, and that type of thing. So I thought it was good entertainment. The girls were getting at it, and I think that's what Brian wants. He wants to see these youngins have a go.
Which was interesting because I have done a lot of debates, and typically when I'm headed into a debate, it's a different me, is what I would say.
I'm not gonna lie, I used to like really hate Candace Owens just because like, she's conservative and she's for that audience who's like, she's for that audience who likes Tommy Loren and watches Fox News. She's for that type of audience. But I mean, I ain't gonna lie. Every now and then, after a while, I started to hear things that I agreed with from her. I mean, if I would have been like introduced to her in a different way, then maybe I would have like thought differently. But all the things that she said in the beginning of her career as this commentator of this every now and then that leftist side will take somebody that's not necessarily from our community, but they have the same skin color as us, but they didn't grow up like none of us who lived in low level areas when we were younger. Mother had to go to work, or father had to go to work, or both mom and dad had to go to work, and didn't have time to do this and do that. Versus somebody who grew up with money. Let's just keep it real. Grew up with money, and they always got everything they wanted. They always take somebody who's from that background, or they'll always take somebody who's from that background, or they'll take somebody from our background, but that person acts a certain way for views and monetary status, kind of like the Hodge twins. Like, I used to really like the Hodge twins. I used to love them. They're funny. Their whole, deal was to do comedy, right? But then somewhere along the lines, they started doing conservative content, doing that conservative content. And then once they started doing the conservative content, I'm sure they started getting traction and getting money, and pandering to that Trump audience or whatever. But it's a shame, because I really used to like them, and this is no different with her. I mean, but I still rock with a lot of things that she says, because a lot of things that she says make sense. I mean, there will be times where I'm like, okay, yeah, she's bucking, she is out of her mind. But other times she makes a good amount of sense with the arguments that she makes.
But in this particular conversation, I actually wanted to hear what the girls had to say. Like, I definitely did not have any animosity toward any of them. And as I said on the show, my heart really broke for that 22-year-old young girl saying that, she has slept with upwards of 10 men in one night. I just as a mom, I think that it just sort of destroyed me a bit. And I really did pray for her, even though she didn't ask for it. And you didn't say much during the particular podcast episode, but then you went onto Instagram and you kind of not attacked me, but you definitely had some choice words, I would say, and said that I was playing to my base.
So you wouldn't do a threesome with your husband?
Absolutely not, because he's my husband.
Did you even have to ask that to get the
Well,
answer?
I mean, there's
Absolutely
married
not.
couples that want to have threesomes, and
you know
some
what
of these
happens?
ladies are
You
bi-curious.
should jump into those Reddit threads, because every single time that marriage ends in divorce. There's so many Reddit threads.
No,
about,
they don't.
And a lot of them
I have
actually do
regulars
really
of
well
over 5
too.
years.
Okay.
And
There's
they're
some that
not
do.
divorced.
Do you
Well,
believe
what
atheists
she
can get
said.
married?
I think atheists get married because they.
Let me pause to read what she said. She said, I couldn't help that one. She was definitely playing to her base and got condescending, pleasing the show host who wanted her to slam us for the entertainment value. She raised some interesting talking points. The rest are completely off base, because this isn't open-minded enough to accept that sex workers and clients have mutually beneficial relationships that empower, not harm. With all due respect, I wouldn't trade shoes with her. My whole life has been epic. My couples and solo male clients are very healthy and very happy. That's an outrageous thing to type out. I mean, that's really like 2 minutes I wish I could get back of my life. Like, how can you be proud of being a therapist and actually like smashing your clients? You may as well just be a two. Maybe we'll just go ahead and be a 2. Drop your certifications, drop your license, and just be a 2. Because like, what sense does it make being a therapist and smashing your clients? What if the scenario comes down to be where like let's just say the man in a marriage, the couple that are together, the man has to see you, he grows an attachment to you. How does one get out of that situation of the relationship between the client and the therapist if an attachment is had there because he can't stop, and the wife can't get him to stop? Like, how does that like, what is your protocol for that?
Want a tax break. I don't see the point in an atheist getting married. Why don't you just live with your partner? Okay. Whoever it is that you're dating, you're at the stage you said, I don't know if you live with your boyfriend or whatever it is. Why take the next leap? If you're wearing crosses for fun and, you know,
I mean, if you're actually asking the question, I mean, because then I would just be pledging the fact that I would want to be with them forever.
But you can just be with them forever. So what is it that you crave that when you want to get married? What's that next step for you? What does it mean? What's the difference between dating and marriage?
Because it's a commitment.
She's on her
Dating
head.
not a commitment.
It's a commitment, but
Oh
it's saying
my God.
the next step. It's solidifying it.
Okay.
Oh,
Solidifying what? Because
it's
if you're
Solidifying a bond between two people that love each other.
okay, but what is solidified? If you can then jump into that next commitment, which is the exact same as dating, and you can sleep with other people and you can put topless photos on the internet, what are you getting married for? Pictures on Instagram to say you did it?
I mean, I'm not sleeping with other people.
What's the
but
difference for you between dating and marriage?
I just told you it's a
She
bond
got her
between
in
two
a
people. You're
corner.
solidifying that by law. You're literally making it known. I want to be with this person forever. It isn't just a simple breakup.
Which I thought, okay, I thought I was nice to you. I thought that I was nice to everyone that was there. I
She
didn't
had
say
that woman in
anything
the corner
that was
just
playing
now,
to my
I ain't
face
gonna lie.
in the same way that you guys were talking about what you believed in and how you live your lives. I was talking about what I believed in and how I lived my life without playing to anybody. So I was a bit surprised by your commentary.
So that is very interesting. I did not know very much about you. I knew of you. I'm a very busy athlete. And then being as it may in my profession, it's all physical work. It's all a lot of interpersonal, you know, we're meeting with a lot of people. So I'm not watching a lot of television and streaming, but I did know of you.
I was about to say, to downplay who Candace Owens is a cop out, and it's very persnickety, and it shows that you are really in your emotions if you acting like you don't know who she is. Even if somebody doesn't like Candace Owens, they know who she is. Regardless of anything, people know who she is. And this woman right here knows who she is. Like, come on now. Get out of your emotions. Get out of your emotions and be honest with yourself. You know who this woman is.
So people were giving me a lot of emails and saying, "Do you think that she's authentic?" And I'm like, "What do you mean by this?" And do you think she's playing to her base into the camera based on your knowledge? Well, let me go get a little background. So I did do some background work, and I would, you know, like to discuss some things to that effect. So people in the sex industry that are supportive of my take on it, that watched it, they felt that you too, maybe perhaps you were playing to a particular audience, and your audience is the conservative audience, the Christian audience. So you know, you may very well be, you know, very convicted authentically for how you feel, but that has been some of the questions posed, like that you're a professional provocateur, and that you take your take to appease a certain audience and base that you connect with, that really loves you, your fans and supporters. But that's just one segment of society versus like everybody. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And some of the comments, they weren't. I mean, it was just like offhanded comments. Where, you know, when I watched your documentary, you did a very good job in terms of being a real investigative journalist. And you did your due diligence, and you went interview after interview, first person.
Like, am I the only one who can like read the backhanded level of sarcasm that she just gave her? Like, you did a very good job. You did a very, very good job. Like, why? She playing in her face right now. That's crazy. This woman is like literally playing it in her face right now. Nah, that's sarcasm. That's being sophomoric, and that's sarcasm.
and you laid out your story chronologically. And I'm like, that's really good work. And that's a good job. Well done. But the way that the whatever podcast went, there were just these offhanded comments and then personal convictions and opinions. But the offhanded comments to implying that is so and that is true, it really actually creates a false narrative because none of it was really validated and substantiated. And we are in the game, like we have the the experience, the actual working experience. But also, I bring an education and a background to share with you as well.
Well, it's interesting that you would have me pegged as a professional provocateur in those circumstances, only because if you go back and you watch it, it's very obvious that the sex workers are trying to provoke me. You had the one young girl who was saying, and she was you guys were kind of jumping off of each other, but she was like, what if your husband comes to me and he wants to get pegged? I mean, that's trying to be provocative, obvious.
Like the most extreme
circumstances.
Right?
Like that's obviously trying to be provocative and not trying to sincerely have a conversation.
Yeah.
When you say to someone, you're sitting across from somebody who is a conservative and is a Christian, and you say, well, the cross is just cute. You're trying to be provocative. So it was interesting to me that I felt like I was extremely level-headed, and I was responding to their provocative takes, and I did not lose my cool or lose my head. And if you're presenting yourself as somebody who's interested and open to having a dialogue and wanting to present your side, that you would wait until the conversation's over to then make a comment about me online, when I was, as I said, very open and I think very kind to everyone, given the fact that it was pretty obvious that they were trying to provoke me and not the other way around.
Yes and no. I think, you had a little, you went at her and took a shot at her before she even opened up about that cross thing. And to me, that was just a stupid thing to talk about in the first place for me. To argue about.
I took a shot at her. We just disagreed on the young woman who was not her, who did the video, who went online and was talking about not having kids.
Yeah.
She was very defensive of that woman, obviously, because she sees herself in that young woman. She's in her 30s. She's not married and she has no kids. And she may have taken personally what my stance was that on that woman, but I wasn't talking to her. I didn't personalize it and say, you're this or you're that. So I would definitely pause and ask you to rewatch it and really see who's being provocative, because I was definitely interested to learn more about, especially the 22-year-old girl that was sitting across from me. But
the problem with that interview or that panel is that Candace Owens was reading all the sex workers in there, and they were offended. She wasn't shouting at nobody or anything like that. I mean, from the clips that you've seen, she wasn't doing no type of shouting or nothing like that. But she was definitely reading all those women up in there. And obviously, as you can see, she was pressing them with an acid, like on their head top, pressing them, asking them questions that made a lot of sense. And none of them in there could really answer the question, because they didn't have no logical destination for the response of the question that she asked. And that's what was making all of them women up in there who were sex workers very, very hostile and mad at Candace Owens. And all the other people on the opposite end of the argument of not supporting sex work, basically.
But I didn't really have an interest one way or the other in the girl that I felt was intentionally being provocative and saying that she was wearing a cross to a Christian and saying that it's just cute and
just fashion
pretending that Jesus Christ, which by the way, historically, even if you don't have faith, Jesus Christ did exist. So she was saying these things to try to draw a reaction out of me, and I didn't give that to her. But yeah, I was interested really in your story and talking about, being a sex therapist. That also is provocative to say to married women that I sleep with your husband to make your marriages better. I have
them as well. And the women as well. And the women as well.
Our veterans gave everything to protect our nation, and Pure Talk understands the sacrifices that they've made. Pure Talk announced that they would alleviate $10 million in veteran debt by Veterans Day by giving a portion of every new order to this cause. Because of your support, they're on pace to reach their goal with a couple of weeks to go. Pure your cell phone service, data, plus a mobile hotspot today. Let's rock.com/.
But I mean, we can get into, how I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
let's park
couples.
aside the whatever podcast, and we have you here now, and we can kind of explore exactly who you are and what it is that you do and how you've come to be involved in the industry, because we didn't get to really hear that on the whatever podcast. So I guess where do you come from? When did you enter into the sex industry?
So I had been in a 7-year-long marriage, and my husband, we were trying to work on his drinking problem. It really tall, really smart guy, and he never, ever, ever got too drunk, but he always had to have that after dinner beverage. And as time went on, I was very young. As time went on, we had children, and I'm very ambitious, and I started working on my degree. I was actually getting a doctorate in jurisprudence. And it was becoming a more problem because as time goes with that kind of disease, maybe he's not getting drunk every night and we don't see it. He's very high functioning, but as time went on, he started to function less so well and start to show alcoholism. So we went through a series of counseling and it just didn't quite work. So I had to make the decision, do I want my son to see this ongoingly on a daily basis, or should I make a move and do something a little differently? So I started seeing, I was in an arrangement with a doctor, really great man. We're friends to this day. And he said, I shouldn't tell you, but if you went over to the world famous Bunny Ranch, I may lose you, but you would do really fantastic. And those girls over there make a lot of money, and that could help, catapult you into just being self-independent. And he was assisting with my bills. So I went ahead and took the opportunity, and I was invited to be on the
And I did just want to let y'all know that the Bunny Ranch is a brothel. Just want to put that out there. The Bunny Ranch is a hoe house. But anyways, continue.
HBO special. I did decline. Dennis Hoff is a promotional genius.
Pimp.
I mean, he was just
Dennis
an
Hoff is
animal.
a
He'd get
pimp.
up at 4 a.m. and he'd take this interview. He'd go on this radio show, and he always kept us in the limelight, so we were relevant. So it was very busy. People from all over the world,
all
like
makes
really
sense
high astute
now.
people, you name it.
All
So-
of this makes sense now. It all makes sense now. She used to be at a brothel. She was a sex worker before she was ever a therapist. This blows my mind now. But it all makes sense now. It all makes sense why she was there on that whatever podcast panel now. See, I didn't understand it before. I thought she was just a therapist who was like, just offering that service of her body to a couple like that. Like, which in itself to me is just weird, because like strangers who are not your husband or your wife entering your bedroom, that there's soul ties there with that. Doing stuff like that, you start messing around with a whole bunch of spirits, whole bunch of whatever, when you start doing, things that are not, when you start messing with things that are sacred, like the intimacy between a husband and a wife.
all I needed to do was show up and be there for no more than like 10 days. My sister would take care of my son. We lived on the same street. And because again, I was like a stay-at-home wife going to college. And then I'd get to come home after 10 days and spend the whole rest of the month with my young son, being a present mother. And what was really fun about it is we co-parented. So then my sister, who has a little girl and at the time a little boy, they would come over, and the school was right next door. So it was the best of both worlds, because I didn't want to compromise. I didn't want to go out into the working world and be that mom that's like constantly working and never present for my son. So I appreciated that. And then you can add in, I'm very athletic, so I do fitness competitions. So I was able to add in the athleticism, all of the things that I do for my athletics that most people can't afford that time.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and there's actually, you said a lot here that I want to slowly unpack for people that are watching this. The first and foremost is that you had a marriage that didn't work out, right?
Correct.
You were together for 7 years. You produced one kid with this individual, and you had a person that was suffering with alcoholism.
Correct.
What you haven't said, and what I'd like to ask you about, is that when that marriage fell apart, did you sense some sort of, did you go through some financial distress? Did you sense some urgency to figure out how you're going to take care of your child now that you weren't in a 2-parent household and, needed to figure it out as a single mom?
Yes.
Okay.
And then even more than that, I would hope that the next question, or a question that would be in her next series of questions, is how do you think your son feels about you? How did you think your son would feel about you doing sex work? Or does he even know that you were doing sex work at a certain point in time in your life? Because that's something that's never taken into effect when these adults who are sex workers go out into the field of like being toots and doing OnlyFans and all of that, is the fact that they have kids, and your kid is going to grow up to see you do some things on camera, or they're going to hear about it from somebody who's a friend or a relative or something like that. Like, how do you think your child feels about you busting that thing wide open?
Absolutely.
So I think that that's really important to talk about, because when we talk about the sex industry, and even though you might be a willing participant in it now, and you may have gotten into it and seen the upside, and you describe that upside as, well, I spent 10 days going on the ranch, and then I would come back and be able to focus on my child. A lot of times people that are getting into this industry are doing this because they are financially desperate, right? And I think that's very important, and it's very sad, especially when you have someone who isn't an adult woman and yet is an 18-year-old girl who's coming from a trailer park existence, has doesn't have stable parents, and is trying to make money. So this is where I struggle with the glorification of the industry, because most people are coming to it as a desperate measure. And I think that you're an example of that. Even if now that's transformed for you and you enjoy what you do, you are an example of someone whose back was against the wall and so decided to jump into the sex industry.
You could look at it that way. Dennis would always say famous last words when girls would go, and do something, and then they'll come back. Girls go and they come back. And so it's fascinating because, let's fast forward and let's just go through the run. I'm making all this money. I've paid off houses. I went and opened an art studio. Even during COVID, I've proven that I can stack up in the white collared arena. I went and became vice president of business growth at an active wealth management company during COVID. Grabbed my real estate license because of the exodus of California. Started doing transactions because they bombarded us during California, and I don't blame them. But then I went back. I keep going back, and so I'll talk.
Easy money.
It's a combination of things, but I think what it is too is that we're afforded the ability to make the amount of money that we want. We can take the clients that we want. We can do what we want. Oh, I don't like that type of activity you're requesting, but I could refer you. Oh yes, this feels good. I like this person. I want to spend time with this person. Then meanwhile, I can do all the things that I'm wanting to do with my health and beauty and doing these fitness competitions and whatnot. Now, I went and became a teacher, and I taught kinder. I mean, I kind of got burnt out and went and did that for a while. That actually was even more damaging for me. And it's so sad because I wanted to put my heart and soul into the public education system, authentically so. And they offered me like $1,300 a month. They're trying to overwork me at 60 hours a week. When we would do volunteer things on for a fundraiser, they wanted me to buy all the face paints for 500 people. And it was crazy. So I had to keep my regular clientele on the side to finance the lesson materials, because children, we need to play with them. They didn't give me any lesson materials. There's no such thing. We have to buy it or make it.
Right.
So
And I hear this often when you talk to teachers about how they don't make a decent salary, and you're seeing more and more examples in the media of people that were teaching and giving their life to teaching who are now running OnlyFans accounts and making quadruple, and sometimes making $1 million a year.
Exactly.
But once again, what that highlights is that you are making a decision that is based on finances, not a decision that is based on morality.
And then even more than that, it's a thing of you're put in a stance of not being in comfortability with something that you go and do that's different from what makes you more money. You know the old saying, it's like you got to do stuff that you don't like to get where you want to be. And there are a bunch of people who do sex work that don't like doing sex work, but they do it because they make a whole bunch of money and then leave and go find something else to do. And just like this lady here who's the sex worker, or who's the sex worker, she obviously left to go do other things. You heard her say real estate and teacher and a whole bunch of other things that she was doing, but she was never satisfied with any of that stuff and found her way back to sex work because why? She got comfortable being able to come back and do it.
Morality, not a decision that is based on a desire. I would be willing to bet that if teaching children offered you the same salary or more than you make as a sex worker, you would stick with teaching.
Yeah.
perhaps,
Yeah. So you
perhaps
do
there's some other things
understand- go on.
to the education industry that I want to work out. But I do agree, because when you are passionate about teaching, even with all the muck, the politics coming top down, some of the parents that can just be ridiculous, right? Once you shut the door, it's not about any of that. It's you and your students, and that's why teachers stay. But my goodness, they work these long hours. They tend to be very unhealthy. They tend to have health problems because they're not taking care of themselves. They're too busy taking care of everybody else but themselves. But I do understand the point that you are making. That if there were more options, maybe people would less gravitate towards the sex industry.
Yeah, and it going back to the 22-year-old girl that was sitting across from me, is that she is making decisions for the rest of her life based on fast money that is coming in, and there are going to be more severe implications for her when she's older. She had a very, I think, young idea that, well, then I'm just going to stop being a prostitute. I'm just going to start dating guys, and then it's all going to be fine because I'm going to have a savings account. And she doesn't think it's going to impact her dating prospects in the future. I think she's wrong about that. It's to be determined. But
I think it's to be determined.
Well,
and I don't know that you can necessarily project. I think you're projecting a negative forecast.
I can't project it because I wasn't a sex worker, so I'm definitely not projecting anything onto her.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the common circumstance
Exactly.
of
It's
porn
happened
stars. You might
before.
find an exception of a
Exactly.
woman who got married and settled down and was happy.
There are
But
some
as a
people
general
who
rule,
have been
people that are
porn stars
prostitutes and
that
people that are
ended
sex
up-
workers don't skip off into the sunset and have a
There are
wife
some
take offense.
people who were or who are porn stars who are miserable. Some of them go into deep, dark depths of depression. Some of them turn to drugs. Some of them turn to drinking. Some of them end up unaliving themselves because they hate what they do. They hate what they do. Yeah, they're making money, but for how long can you live with that in your soul that, oh, hey, I do this for a living, Some of those people who were porn stars, who are porn stars now, got family that disown them because that's what they do for a living. And some of them are hurt because they think that that's the last. It was a last resort, and now it's making them money, and they think that there's nothing else on the table for them to do. There are some very talented people in this world. It's up to you to make the decision to go find yourself and be right within your soul and stuff, like just doing stuff out of necessity and wanting to just make a whole bunch of money. Like it's almost like, are you willing to like break the trust that you have within your soul just for money?
And I would say let's just talk about your husband, your former husband. What is the circumstance now? Were you a sex worker when you were in the marriage?
No.
Okay. Do you guys have any sort of a relationship now?
No, we don't.
Okay.
And I think it's one of these bittersweet things where I think he was very ashamed of his behavior. And so he decided to run off to California and start anew. And so it was like, okay, but he wasn't, I went ahead and had him sign his rights over as a father. And he wasn't the type of guy that would interfere. He just kind of was a deadbeat and fell off. But that was almost a blessing in disguise, because I talk with a lot of folks that have their exes that they're still trying to co-parent with, and just the angst and pains of dealing with them. I don't have drama. Let's put it that way. We've been afforded no drama. It's been a calm, nice, easygoing, great energy, household to raise my son in.
Okay. And have you remarried since?
No, by choice.
Now
When
it's
I
by
was
choice.
networking, I had to
Okay.
network with a group of
Sure.
fantastic ladies, female entrepreneurs, during COVID, when I did the VP of business growth for the wealth management company. And we would talk a lot about that. Just this great group of ladies, networking is a part of it. So one of the things that they would impress upon me when we would talk about significant others, they always want me to go to their happy hours and whatnot. We had socials all week. They said, wait and hold. They'd say, wait and hold, because I would say, well, here I am doing this, and now I'm not traveling as much. So I think I might make it my goal. I'm going to find somebody to settle down with. Why not? And they'd say, wait and hold. They said, don't force anything. Everything's meant for a reason. When their men, their spouses, their number one came out of the woodwork, they weren't even expecting it. And if you're one that's very spiritual, and I know that you are, perhaps that happened to you. I would love to hear how you met your spouse and how you knew that you felt it was different, because they have described it feels completely different. And you'll know when it's right. So don't go forcing yourself into anything. You just wait and live your life and enjoy yourself.
But I take you as someone who's sensible enough to understand, sitting across from that younger girl, I do think she just doesn't quite get it, because, well, first and foremost, your brain is not developed at the age of 22.
Correct.
Things kind of come into a different focus once you get into your mid-20s. You're older. I think that you definitely understand that what you are doing right now is obviously going to limit your romantic prospects. I mean, without question, the average guy, if you go around and ask them, would you want to date a sex worker? Their honest answer is going to be no. That's the majority, the overwhelming majority of men. Would you want to sleep with a sex worker? If nobody found out, maybe their answer would be yes. But marrying one, you're not deluded.
I know I totally understand where you're coming from. It's kind of interesting because, like, for example, if you were to go look at our online platforms, sex workers, and you're like, well, who's going on there and following them and commenting? And it's like these like really goofy trolls and stuff. And it's like, those dorky guys aren't even the ones that are dating us. The lurkers. It's the ones like they can't come and admit it, right? It has to be discreet because it's frowned upon. It's faux pas in our society. But all these lurkers are watching, and then we have literally
So you're
all
talking about the
different people
tricks?
from the whole spectrum of life coming in and seeing us, right?
The
on the
men
low.
the men who can't find no
Same
woman,
dynamic
but he got
when
money.
they inquire about a
So
relationship. So I have a guy over in Utah, rather conservative, and he's been inquiring, and he has a 2-year-old, sweet little boy. I have them inquiring all the time, really high level gentlemen. And I think for them, it's at first it's like, wow, okay, but it's kind of like, well, would you consider a relationship? Would you consider kind of, stepping out of the limelight and changing it up, or maybe we can compromise. So I find it even opens the door even further, because then because I'm being marketed and I'm getting more people coming to me because of the job. You're also getting people that are like genuinely interested in a relationship. There's this guy that works at NASA that was talking to me, and I was kind of like, maybe I should have went and dated him, because then we're in that predicament where it's like, should we go afford to give that person our time and our energy, right? When we're used to monetizing that. So then that becomes a little bit of a tricky thing, because there's some pretty amazing men coming forth and expressing interest.
So what I would say is that if you tell me that there's a conservative man in Utah who's inquiring because they're dealing with you, that they're
sound like a
probably not
business
conservative. Like, I
relationship.
think that it just doesn't make sense to say
Yeah.
that you're a
Business
conservative
relationship
man
more
than
who's
anything.
pursuing a sex worker.
Sure.
Especially since one of the staples of conservatism is the family unit, right? So if you have a 2-year-old and you're pursuing a sexual relationship that's outside of a marriage with a woman, that already stipulates to me that you're not a conservative on paper. So I don't know
I
the
don't
person,
really
but
think that any conservative, most conservatives are typically a little hypocritical.
okay. Well, then I would.
I find.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
But
So I
then
tend to
would-
find on the flip side. I don't,
Yeah, and well, I would imagine that you're looking at a very specific pool of men that colors your opinion of men. Because you're constantly dealing with
Yeah.
men that pursue sex workers, and this was something that I was trying to get across to the young woman when she was talking about, there's all these men that want to be pegged, and I'm like, do you realize what category of men? They're not high value men. The men that are walking into brothels are not high value men. That's the
Hey,
point.
I
Tricks.
disagree.
This
I flatly disagree.
Okay,
They're
and so we're never
tricks.
going to agree on
No,
that.
I know. There's things
I
that we
really
won't,
very
but-
much believe
Niggas
that you
with
can have
money are the
someone who
ones
is a
who are
hypocrite,
doing that
someone who
freaky
is,
stuff.
cosplaying a conservative by day, but the very moment that you debase your family and you go into a brothel as an option for you to explore sexual fantasy, you have removed yourself from the aspects of manhood that makes masculinity great. One of those aspects being self-control, right? And
What if you're bringing your
but-
wife and she wants to come?
then you're not a conservative couple, obviously.
Okay.
Because you don't
Okay,
find
so that's
conservative
the argument
couples at a
of
brothel.
conservative
Freaks.
versus not.
That's what y'all are.
Yeah, because the concept of being in a conservative, the concept of being in a marriage, I don't want to say conservative marriage, is that you are husband and wife and you're together and you do not invite that into your marriage.
Mhm.
But so I would push back on that. The second thing that I would say is that for the men that are looking to establish a relationship with a sex worker, it has been my understanding that most of those men are probably suffering from something that a lot of men suffer from, which is sex addiction. And so I think it's interesting that you consider yourself to be a sex therapist that offers men sex, and you haven't considered, and maybe you have, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it, sex addiction as one of the elements that's bringing men to you. You come from a relationship where your husband was an alcoholic. If I said I was a therapist and I offer men vodka, do you understand that you're offering men something that actually they need to get help over? If at the moment that you're going to a brothel and you're paying for sex, it probably indicates that you have some sort of an addiction. You're helping men with these addictions. The majority of them, I would assume, behind the backs of their wives. So I'd like to hear what you have to say just about sex addiction, if it's something that you consider when you come across all these clients that actually these men are suffering and they need help, and the help is not sexual that they need.
Let's see.
Right.
Hold on. Hold
well,
on.
we're
Let's see. Let's see if she gives a valid argument or she suppresses and downplays that argument because she's in that field. Let's see where she goes with this sex addiction question.
seeing a whole gamut of people. And so that is one downside, just like anything else, food, gambling. I have been able to identify it in some individuals coming in because they might come in and say, well, I don't know about if I'll be able to afford my bills next month. Anybody that starts talking that, it's not a good idea. And I will flatly say, I don't think this is good for you. I don't recommend you do this.
Mhm.
Do not compromise your finances to come in for whatever reason, if it's entertainment value, if you're wanting to work on a particular sexual issue, or you're wanting to flesh through something that is emotional, if that's going to compromise your finances, sorry, that's not a good choice. And I will be very forward about that. The people that are coming in for a gazillion different reasons. Couples will come in, like, let's say, high school sweethearts, right? And she is bi-curious, and they love each other, and they're great parents. Maybe they run a business together. And I'm going off of like real case scenarios. But she would like to experience a lady, and nobody wants to cheat on each other. Nobody wants to break up over this. So they come in and they experience a lady in a safe environment where we're being tested. And it's fantastic. And
That's
so,
not the majority of your clients. Like, will you give me a percentage of how many people are in a stable relationship and they just are bi-curious and they're coming to a safe place to explore bisexuality?
the majority of my couples, that is all it is. The majority of my couples aren't even necessarily, sometimes they'll want to come in and troubleshoot something. Recently, a lady was saying, this has been a thing. And I don't know if it's coming on the heels of everybody, this alpha male talk or whatever, but wives that are saying, look, I want my husband to be more of an alpha in the bedroom, and I want him to work with you, and I want you to get him a little bit more like a dom. I want him to come up and grab me. And guys will come in and they'll be so like stepping on eggshells to get to it. And we're just like all balls out, if I may say. You know what I mean? Like, we're very translucent, and let's get to it. And it doesn't offend us to talk about it. That's the point. We've got to communicate on it to make it better. But they'll be afraid. And they're like, I just don't want to disrespect you. I don't want to demean you. And so play that scenario out in the bedroom where the lady's like, I want him to just grab me and ravish me. And he's like more beta, so they'll want to work on that.
So you're
Or
telling the majority of the
That
people
can't
that
be
reach out to
that
you
can't be every
are
majority of
couples.
That cannot be every client.
they're single men, or
Yeah.
yeah. And I'll kind of get into the dynamics on them.
But that's important to know, because I want to talk about the majority of the people that you see, because I do think it would be exceptional that a woman who is married would come to you and book you and say, I want this for my husband and for us. I think probably we know that the sex industry is something that is pursued by men. I think we know
a lot of solo men, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes solo women. And so that's always interesting. They'll come in. And I've never partooken, but I've had some come in that are meeting with us and talking with us that want to flirt, and it's really cute.
The Bible is the root of wisdom, inspiration, and spiritual nourishment. The Hallow app empowers you to explore the Bible's profound teachings and incorporate them into your daily life. Hallow offers an extensive library of Bible reading plans accompanied by insightful reflections and audio-guided meditations. So whether you're a seasoned Bible reader or you're just starting your journey, Hallow provides a platform for you to engage with Scripture like never before. A great place to start is with Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year, in which he offers brief daily readings and reflections available on the Hallow app. Studying the Bible's literary brilliance has influenced countless writers, poets, and artists throughout history. By studying the Bible, you'll gain a deeper appreciation for the power of storytelling, symbolism, and metaphor. The Hallow app also helps you connect with a community of like-minded individuals. Share the app for free.
Are wanting to celebrate. They want to celebrate their anniversaries. And I know to you, you're probably cringing because, from your conservative viewpoint, you're like, oh, that's a terrible idea. They literally want to celebrate their anniversaries and their birthdays and like Valentine's Day weekend. It's huge for us. And that, to me, it's an honor. I can think of some really hot situations that happened when I was booked for anniversaries with some amazing, amazing people. And it was really flattering that they wanted to share that moment with me. They're never going to forget me. And they probably think I've long forgot them, and I haven't. Because of what they were celebrating, so a lot of times it's an entertainment thing as well. It's kind of like perceived as like a luxury wellness session where we can go play out this really fun fantasy, and then I'll do like a couples massage. I will do a bona fide massage afterwards. So then you have your blissful sauna stuff, and then you can go off and they can go continue. Usually they're vacationing, they're flying in from everywhere. Now on the single guys, there are women. It's called the hall pass, and this is not uncommon. And It's just something that people don't talk about. But the hall pass is when, you know, that longstanding joke, oh yeah, if you want your sex life to die, go get married, right? There's always these jokes about that. So it's like that, where the woman, and I hear story after story about it. And to be fair, you know, maybe the man needs to put more effort into things as well. But where they're together and she's flipped the script and she's no longer interested in sex. And when they were courting, and you know, she was into it, and then she turns around after they get married and says, I don't like doing oral. That's to me, it's gross. Or that's demeaning that you're asking me to do this. And then he's getting sex no more than once or twice a month. But what they do love about each other is that if they're running a business successfully, or they love the fact that they're great parents, you know, they don't want a divorce. But she'll say, I'm going to let you go to one of the legal brothels because they're tested. They don't have any emotions in the game. They're not going to try to steal you. They're not going to try to have an emotional affair with you. That's one of the things that when people get into these circumstances, they don't want someone to go off and have an emotional affair and then run away and leave. So the hall pass is actually a common thing. And women will email in. Women have emailed in and said, yo, this is, you know, me and so, and I want you to know this is what we're doing.
When I hear you talk about these circumstances, and it seems like you always want to bring up the couples, you always want to, you know, formalize it as, well, I'm helping certain people or they're reaching out to me, and these situations are the ones that I deal with. I almost feel like you're trying to justify your line of work, and that there is an element of it that is dishonest, because everybody knows that the majority of people that go to prostitutes are men, and you kind of skate over that, and you don't really want to talk
Go
about
right to it.
yeah,
Include-
but you don't want to talk about the
include
more
women.
important elements. Like, I'm sure there are exceptions. There are people, and I don't cringe at it. I just don't consider those people to be married. I considered it to be a complete farce and a fraud, as I said on the whatever podcast. You know, it is fraudulent to say that you are in a marriage and then to give your partner to somebody else. It means that the word marriage really has no meaning for you. And that's largely the society that we live in today, where we are taking words that once meant something and we're trying to update them and make them progressive to fit the times. And anybody can be in a marriage, even if we're not doing anything or acting like we are in a marriage. So I don't cringe at it. I just think this couple is a fraud. They're frauds. And,
Okay.
but to get to you and my interest in that, when you're publicly interfacing, you always talk about these couples and these scenarios, but you don't want to push and talk about the fact that men are right now struggling in this country, especially in this country, with porn addiction, with sex addiction, because I spend my time doing almost the opposite work and opening that conversation with pornography and looking at the comments of young men who write and say how hard it is for them, how sex addiction has ruined their life, because I personally know people who have ruined their own lives. No, I think it would be hard to gather the statistic of how many men want to admit to, you know, watching pornography and being addicted to it.
That's like
It's
half
a
of
hard
all men.
statistic to grab. It is. People are not going to be honest about things that they do in the dark, right? But I can just tell you, I have entire episodes on pornography, and you are welcome to go look at all the YouTube comments of men thanking me for opening the conversation, for having the courage to have the conversation. It's the reason why they liked Dr. Jordan Peterson. It's the reason why they like Andrew Tate, because these men are opening the conversation on how pornography is actually weakening men and enslaving them, and in many ways. And so it's been interesting to me, as somebody who is fascinated in how we have desensitized people to sex, and how men are quite literally being slaved by an over pornographic society, rather to sit
Not even
across from
just
you and
that,
to have you just skirt over
over-sexualized
that. Like, you know,
society.
we're talking about addiction, and I would hope
If anything.
that you would have compassion for that, because you were married to somebody who had an addiction. You know what
Oh, I
addiction
do.
means.
Yes.
It is an
And I'm not
impulse that you
skirting
can't
over it.
fight. And it's not just the people, when you say, oh, well, I turn down the ones that, if they say I barely have any money, that's the guy that's already ruined his life. But what about the guy who has an unlimited resources of money, right?
Mhm.
Who comes to you and says, I'll pay anything. That's also addiction. I'll pay you this. I'll, you know, just
Exactly.
give me
The
what I
tricks.
need.
They're
You-
not
you
all
are-
they're
you
not
are-
all suffering from sex addiction.
But how did you
that are
know
coming
that?
in.
How did you know that? Because I would
Because
say
they tell me.
You're
They tell me
delusional.
they tell
And you
me
believe 'em?
what their
did your husband
frequency
tell
that
everyone
they're
about
coming
You
in.
believe 'em?
his drinking?
Well, they're pretty honest, because once you get behind closed
Addicts
doors
are
with
never
us,
honest.
I'll tell you,
Exactly.
Addicts are never honest. That's a
I've
part of
had-
addiction, is lying.
I'll tell you, I've had Marines and I've had Army men break down and cry to me because I offered them a safe space. My my space is so safe. I have people opening up on lots of different fronts.
Mhm.
And mom's the word. I don't ever, out my people. And I've had some pretty amazing moments. I've been given an Afghanistan of a flag, an American flag that was during the Afghani war flown over Afghanistan because I provided a really good service to somebody suffering from post-trauma. I do a 25% off anytime special for law enforcement and veterans. And I even have people in law enforcement emailing me, even if they're not partaking, thanking me for that because of all the crap that they get and all the things that they see and how well I'm
she
trying
want a
to
cookie
take
for
care
that?
of them. One of the brothel owners over in Nevada is former law enforcement. And when she asked me to come to her tour, she called all of her cop friends. They would like to see it decriminalized. They want to go after the pimps and the human traffickers, and they don't want the girls reprimanded for this. They like us too. They see the value in what we do.
Yeah. So what I would say is that we are offering them, especially when
Hell
you use an
no.
example of a former veteran giving you a flag, that saddens me.
And a
But
Purple Heart.
Yeah, it really saddens me
hey,
that
a
someone
Purple
would
Heart
give you
too?
those items that have real meaning and they would give it
Why?
to
I'm very honored.
a prostitute.
And I'm
That's
very
like-
I
grateful.
understand
that's
you're
like-
honored,
Did
but
you know
but I
that-
think that what
Bruh,
you're
that's
offering them
like,
is a drug. So it's no different than them going
that's
to
like
drink at a
when,
bar. Sex is addicting.
That's
It's no different
like
than going
when,
to drink at a bar. It's no different than them finding a
Donald
drug
Trump
addict,
gave,
somebody that's willing to get high with them
Rush
all night and
Limbaugh a
snort
Purple
cocaine to
Heart.
deal with their PTSD.
Well, that's not what I do, and that's not what any of the
Crazy.
providers that I know of do.
What
We don't.
I'm
The
saying, sex is in and of
difference
itself a type of drug. It is addicting. People become
Facts.
addicts, right? And
Facts.
so for you to something that makes you so happy that these people are coming to you makes me sad because this
Sex
means
is
that this is
itself,
how they are
like,
dealing with their trauma. They're dealing with their
pornography
trauma
is a
sexually by
trigger
having sex with a
for a lot
It's
of
stranger.
healing.
I
It's
don't
healing.
think that's healing. I
What
don't
about the
think that's healing.
quadriplegics that are coming in?
It's a
Are
spiritual
they're horrible
trigger.
people? They're
Are they
perverse.
leaving walking?
They're
Because
coming.
then it's
they're-
not healing to have sex with a
They
prostitute.
really, really want to have an intimate experience with the woman, and for whatever reason, they can't. They can't at home because they're bound to a wheelchair. We have parents bringing these kind of individuals in, wanting them to get a wellness session in essence.
Okay, well, I know quadriplegics who have served the nation and lost both of their legs who are married and happy with children. So
that's
as I said,
fantastic.
you are-
Again, it's to each their
but
own.
you
I'm not
keep
judging
mining,
them.
and I'm sorry to cut you off. You keep mining these exceptions, and I think it's
Exactly, you
because you
keep,
do
like,
hold and harbor
glossing.
some guilt. And I think you do know that there are a
Okay.
lot of men
Keep
that are broken
glossing
that are
over
coming to
stuff.
see you, and I and you can definitely correct me. Obviously, you think that I'm wrong here, but when I hear you talking about these circumstances, what you're describing
Some
to
of the
me
men that are
are
coming
men
to
that
you
are
do have
desperate and men that
addictions,
need real
and all
healing.
you're doing
And
is
you are never
helping
going
their
to provide
addiction.
real healing at the
You're
bottom
not
of a bottle,
providing
a la
real
your
healing.
ex-husband, or with a prostitute.
In
It's
some
all in the
cases.
same vein.
In some cases, but for them, if they, if you
Nah,
want to
this
come in
lady
and
is
get a wellness
delusional, for
session,
real.
you're more than able to.
Balance of nature fruits and veggies
No,
are
that
a
la-
great
that-
way to
that
make
lady
sure
is
vacuum
really
process that
delusional.
encapsulates fruits and veggies. The
You
capsules
really
are
think she's helping?
there's never been an easier
Helping
way to
more
make
than
sure that you're getting a
hurting.
bunch of fruit and veggie capsules down
A
and
human,
more energetic.
human's,
I love Balance of Nature because it nature is
sexual
offering
drive
30 promo code Candace for
by doing what she
35% off.
does.
That's balance.
The Bible, because your whole, front is that, you're going to the Bible, you're doing this conservative
It
stuff.
don't even have to be anything that has
Prostitutes
to
were
do with the
popular
Bible.
in the
Like-
Bible. I
like,
mean, I
look.
went and I took a look, and I'm like,
Look.
what in the world?
It doesn't even have to be anything that has to do with the Bible. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Right is right, wrong is wrong. She clearly doesn't. She clearly doesn't believe that she's helping addictions continue and blossom even more from one stage to the next and going up a ladder with somebody's addiction. Like this lady is delusional, and she's just like driving past what is being explained. I mean, let's forget about the fact that Candace Owens is like a Bible, she's a conservative and she believes in God and everything like that. This is just like in general, just on general purpose. Like some of the stuff that this lady has said is just pure and utter garbage. Pure and utter garbage.
going on here. So I went and I kind of took a gather at it.
Sorry, did you say prostitutes were popular in the Bible?
Yeah, they're mentioned. They're mentioned on multiple fronts. So
Yeah,
I'll get into it.
But when you say
So-
popular, what do you mean by that?
I'll go right into these verses for you.
Oh,
But-
boy.
Just to let you know, like I am very spiritually agnostic. So, and I've done a lot of world religion classes as electives. So to even bring the Bible in, I know you will. That's what your base wants, but
You actually brought the Bible in. So.
well, I'm going to bring it in. But for me,
just
I
accused
need
me
a
of what you did
logical.
here.
I just need a logical barometer to go off of, a common sense logical barometer to go off of when we're discussing yay or nay on sex work. But like to make my point, like in Chronicles, so King David had like 8 wives, okay, right? And concubines are sex workers, and he had so many sex workers that he couldn't even keep count. So his body count was apparently way higher than mine, and God condoned it. And then King Solomon, he married his own daughter, which God condoned. He had 700 wives. He had 300 sex workers, all of which God condoned. So, and then we know, with the history of the courtesan and that they were at the top of the food chain back then, whereas the wives were like toddlerized,
Is
couldn't
she
own
really
property,
twisting
and
the
they
Bible
were
to
at
fit
home
her
being,
narrative?
being made to feel like children. But then if you go to Deuteronomy 22, 28 through 29, God instructing a rapist to marry his victim, and they're not even role playing. Genesis 19:16, Lot's wife got turned into a pillar of salt. Okay. Genesis, just in general, Adam and Eve, they have 2 males. So we're apparently all descendants from incest, apparently. And then Adam and Eve raised a murderer as the first humans on earth. It's like, okay, well, that's bad luck.
Right.
So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on all of religious messaging. I think you can take some nice stuff from all of them. And I worked with a close-knit group of Mormons. There's a lot of Mormons that occupy the Boise area. When I was doing white collar work, and I love them to death. Their sense of family and unification, they are fantastic people. Some of the things that they've got going on in their Bible, I'm just like, goodness gracious. But there's things that they believe that I think is good.
That's
I
crazy.
need something common
Yeah,
sense.
that's
Like
crazy.
if I'm spiritually,
I ain't gonna lie, that's
if I'm very
crazy.
spiritual and agnostic,
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Okay. So I'm gonna just back this up because I
That is
don't want
crazy.
the chats and the comments
Wow.
to be mocking you because I think that you've been.
oh,
honest about
that's
the fact-
fine.
Not
They're
the
gonna
fact
mock
that
me
she's
no matter
a
what.
goofy.
agnostic. You obviously are not well read in the Bible.
Exactly.
You probably did a Google search just for
You did a
mentions
Google
of
search. You
prostitution
didn't
and
even
mentions
dissect
of
it
concubines,
correctly.
right? Because you thought that I was going to throw out some Christian rhetoric at you. I would very much
She's doing
open
exactly. Matter of
to,
fact,
suggesting
what's
that you
even more goofy about this is that she's doing the exact same thing that those women on that panel on the whatever podcast was doing. Trying to rile up or ruffle feathers with saying stuff about the Bible or about Christianity to like throw this woman off. And like, if you're gonna debate somebody, just come with facts and come with conviction and come with dictation on come with dictation when you quote in the Bible. Like, don't just bring up Bible verses and what the Google search say. Like, do your own actual research and really like break down those verses that you just read. You ain't do none of that. So now she about to read you.
enter an actual Bible study to understand the things that you're bringing up sort of sporadically here. But suffice it to say that the Bible's messaging and God's messaging is not that prostitutes are good and that it's good to have concubine relationships.
Didn't he love Mary Magdalene? Can you tell me the story of that?
Yeah. And by the way, here's a wonderful series if you'd rather stay cultural on these things. If you watch The Chosen, he heals her, and that you understand that Jesus was a healer. And I would love for you to be healed in your assessments of what it means to be a sex worker, because I do think that you do need Christ. And that's, I told you before we started this episode, before we started this conversation, rather, that I did have a former sex worker who did the exact opposite as you. She was a porn star. She was on Pornhub, and then she found Jesus Christ and she started studying the
I
Bible.
watched it. She was supposedly
Yeah,
on
she was
a
wonderful.
plane, and God started
Yeah.
talking to her.
And I think that could happen for you as well. And so, yes, there are mentions of prostitutes in the Bible. Yes, God has healed prostitutes, and there is no reason ever that any real Christian should ever say to you that your life is over and that you can't transform and that you can't similarly be healed by God's word. And I want that for you in the same way that I wanted that for the girl that I was sitting across for, meaningfully. But I was definitely not going to try to throw you off and have a theological debate with you about the things that you're doing, because, as you said, you haven't presented yourself as a Christian. So I don't find you to be living hypocritically in any
Right.
means. And I don't
Thank
think that
you.
would have been fair. I did with the girl who said she was wearing the cross and said that she was raised a Catholic. She knew what she was saying, and she
Mhm.
obviously knew what she was trying to be, as I said before, perverse, and she was trying to be provocative by taking a shot and saying that the cross is just a cute thing. So she got a little bit more of my ire
Yeah,
that the other people didn't.
I could
so.
see that.
But
To be honest, I think the aliens would be able to make more sense of it all. So I'm on wait and watch. And as more information unfolds throughout the years, I'll make better sense of life.
yeah,
And I'm comfortable being there.
but I'm not
really scared
since you brought up
to be
scripture,
there.
and I wasn't going to bring up scripture, like I do want to just reiterate to you that nobody is perfect. I've had a very troubled life. My life was not easy for me. I could have ended up maybe like you never know. But I was, in a way, saved before I was saved, because I had my grandparents who were devout Christians and who required that we do a Bible study every morning before we went to school. And I think that those things in many ways served as seeds that later grew in my adult life. And I hope that since you're expressing even an interest, if you even just Googled passages about prostitution, that you won't stop there. And that you just try Bible study, see what you learn from it. Have someone sit down from you, start from Genesis, jump into Exodus, to go into Deuteronomy, and really understand the true context of the things that you're pulling up. But again, I wasn't going to present that to you as a challenge. So I think that would not have been fair. But I want to talk to you about your son, because you mentioned that you got into the sex industry because you had to take care of your son and you wanted to spend more time with your son. And in doing just kind of a background check into you, doesn't seem like you and your son live in the same state. Is that correct?
We do. He's
do?
always lived with me.
He's always lived with you.
Yeah, he's there.
Okay. How has your
to the
particular
question.
work impacted his life? How old is your son?
There we go.
He's 21, and he just didn't learn until now. He knows I'm on the show.
Mm.
He's very supportive, and he knows now
Very
this was the
supportive.
year. And he loves me so much. I mean, we are so passionate. We get so emotional. I mean, we get in the room, we'll start hugging me, we start crying. He'll just say, you've been a dad and a mom to me.
So he still lives with you?
He has his own place. He's a chef. He's a chef and a drummer and an amazing guy. But at this point, he's just now getting out on his own. He was a senior during COVID at a private school, a project-based school that Stanford modeled, where he would work with the community CEOs to gain his high school credits. So he built community quite quickly and went off and started working, because during COVID, Idaho was pretty free. And that's why a lot of people were coming over, because of the way we handled COVID. A lot of people weren't even masking up. And he took off into the workforce when older people are saying, let's jump on welfare, or let's jump on unemployment, rather.
So your decisions haven't impacted his life at all?
No, I would say that.
That's cat. That's cat.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that it's been damaging to him.
Cat.
I think that he's had some really good
Absolute
male role models in
Absolute
his
cat.
life, because that is key. Because for
Absolute
me as a
cat.
mom, the Mother's Guild is like,
Absolute
oh, I
cat.
want to, I wish love would strike me, because then,
Absolute cat.
I could give my son Christian a father. But he's had, we put him in a lot of mentoring programs. One of his mentors had been a bachelor on the show The Bachelor. He's a really funny guy. So he's assigned mentors and big brothers. And then my father is a great influence. And he continues to be a great influence and very important person in our lives on the daily. And then my brother-in-law is also a fantastic guy that has spent a great deal of time with my son. So, no, I really don't. And I've even asked him, and and we'll get counseling. I mean, we'll get counseling and we'll talk things out and flesh things out. And really, no.
So if he's watching this, he's saying, my mom is being 100% honest, and I'm proud of her, and I'm proud of the work that she does. And
what's fascinating about him, he's his own individual, right? He's not into social media, whereas I've got to go market on it, which social media is like, ugh. And so he's not a big fan of social media, which I think is really healthy. And he does that on his own. And then he's
never, ever been a moment where your son, when he was younger and he was in school, had a moment where somebody was teasing him because they found out that his mom was a quote unquote sex worker, whatever, what have you. None of that happened. Because that's why I keep on saying cap, because there's no way in 21 years of somebody's life, in the 21 years of your life, only now figuring out that your mom is a sex worker and never having a moment where an outside source told your son that you were a sex worker. There's no way. There's just no way.
Person kind of guy. He's into monogamy. And so he always tells me he is looking forward to being a father.
Mhm.
I had him run my art studio, and we were doing these art parties for children. And he and his girlfriend, who was the key artist, and we would do community classes and whatnot. They had a ball. And he likes kids. I mean, he works with kids. He's been a paid basketball coach. And he'll say, yeah, I look forward to making your grandmother when the time's right later. I want kids. I want to get married. That's my son, his authentic individual self. And then he respects me for my individual self.
But his friends could book you.
No.
Never. They can.
Well, they won't, and they don't.
Okay, but they could, in theory.
Well, if they
Would
wanted
that be
to
wrong?
attempt, but they wouldn't.
Why are you so sure that they wouldn't?
Exactly.
Because I've been like a mom to them.
Okay.
I've been like a mother to these kids.
So he never faced any
no.
teasing from boys
That's what
saying,
Yeah.
I could book your mom tonight
Exactly.
No.
and sleep with your mom.
Nope.
Okay. And so in the
Hasn't
way that you
dealt with that junk.
in the way that you market yourself on social media, your son and his life is not a consideration.
It has not been an issue, and he has reaffirmed, and so have, my supporters, my counselor, that I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Okay.
So I mean,
Because your Twitter feed
Says
it's
otherwise.
pretty,
it's very graphic.
Pretty
It's you
explicit.
giving
It is explicit. So
blowjobs to
obviously,
men,
yes,
it's porn. I mean, it's
correct.
It's
It is
just porn.
It's
She says she
So
is
But
that
he's
you're
not
saying
ashamed
has
of
no
anything.
impact on your 21-year-old son. That
Goodness.
you can just go to a public Twitter feed and
And find
see
that
his mother saying, like,
mother
I'm going to take a big black
getting
cock, which
busted
is
open.
something that you've tweeted.
yes.
Go and
No,
see
doesn't impact
the
your
man's
son.
mother.
No.
You
Well,
think any
first of all, I'm
person watching
shadow
this
banned.
is not going to
Busted.
think that you're being a little dishonest right now.
Exactly.
Look at my son's not out there looking for my porn, and neither are his friends. Nobody
don't
says
know
anything
that.
to him.
You don't know that.
And
you don't
people
know
are
that.
welcome to think what they think.
That's-
People could
that's a
harshly judge
lie.
you and think your children are going to have problems in the future because of what you've done in terms of false narratives.
Oh.
Going after that individual
Oh,
that
boy.
did not shoot up the Robb Elementary School and putting them on blast. Like there's
Who?
a
What,
ton.
Robb Elementary School.
Yeah, all the news reports about how you had falsely accused a trans individual of
Wow.
being the killer.
I think you're confused. I think you're talking about the Texas Elementary School.
Yes.
And the
Is that it?
photos of the kids
Yes.
that were,
Yes.
it was the correct person that I identified. We were having a debate about whether or not this kid had gender identity issues, which has never actually been answered.
Okay.
They just said conservatives think he's
She
trans.
thought
There's
she
not
was
enough
doing
evidence for
something
that.
just now.
Other people are saying that he just liked to wear eyeliner. I didn't identify the wrong person. So
Okay,
I don't,
that's
I think
good.
my kids will be
Somebody's
be
triggered.
okay
Good.
with the correct person.
And you weren't
named in the
insulting
shooting.
somebody who's in a wheelchair that represents Skims. Like there's a model and there's stuff out there that are saying that you insulted the Skims model and
No, we
she's
were
in a wheelchair.
No, not because she was in a wheelchair.
Okay, because
Yeah.
there's like that's out there.
Yeah.
She did her-
Definitely,
she
I
did- she
think
did her research.
media
They did
getting
the
a story
right
wrong
research.
about, a debate about whether or not somebody's trans or whether or not we covered on the show whether people are pandering when they start
Mhm.
doing these sorts of disabled commercials is a little bit different than saying like,
Oh, I
watch
see
me
where you're
swallow
going
this
with
big
that.
black cock. Can you agree? That's a little
Well,
different for a
Damn.
boy growing up. Like,
Whoa.
Well, I mean-
mom's
I mean,
debating
if
whether
it
or
was
not
true,
this
if it was
person is
true
this
that you got
gender.
the wrong shooter wrong, that's
I didn't.
terrible. But
I didn't get
thank
the shooter
goodness,
wrong.
thank goodness.
Never have gotten the shooter
Good,
wrong.
because I'm like, that's kind of mean spirited.
Triggered.
Because a lot of people like what you do. I like how you took the approach in the stand on COVID. But any false narratives and part of why I thought, when I saw some of that stuff, maybe perhaps falsely reported, and it is falsely reported in the news. There's multiple articles stating that you were identifying the wrong person.
No,
and that
they
you
were
were
just
doing
they were
it.
talking about whether the identity of the person. You may have just misunderstood the article.
Okay.
There was a debate, and I still hold that kid had gender issues. So it's my stance on a boy that was dressing in a certain way. They felt that conservatives were wrong in their assessment on the gender identity. Again,
Well, thank you for
this
correcting
isn't
me.
like you say tomato, I say tomato.
Right. Well,
You're doing
some of the
graphic
comments that you were
pornography.
stating when we were on the whatever
keep going back.
podcast were basically
She
too
keep
many
going
false
back to
narratives because the things
what
that
she
you were
does
spouting
a lot.
weren't
That's
true.
hilarious.
What you were saying that people that would come and seek our services are mentally ill and perverse, and the quadriplegics, the individuals that come and see me, the men, the women, what have you, these are normal people. These are your neighbors. These are your local
PTSD
insurance agents. These
PTSD
are,
actually is in the manual as a disorder. So it is perfectly normal to say that somebody that's suffering from PTSD because they served the country is dealing with a psychiatric disorder. I think that's okay to say that. That's honest. And if they're seeking to deal with that psychiatric order
You
by
were kind of-
walking into a
Mhm.
brothel, that is not a good solution to that. And so I stand
disagree.
by that assessment.
you were
right.
making them out to be like these just like perverse, mentally ill people, like
It-
nasty, perverse people coming in. And these are your neighbors. This is your
Are.
insurance agent. This
They
is
are,
like the
though.
cashier over at your grocery store. This is everybody in society.
Not everybody in society is going to a brothel. I can assure you of
Exactly.
that. If
Well,
if
across the
330
board,
million
in all the different, different, I guess, subcultures and cultures of the individuals that make up our United States. So I see all of them in a pro-social way, and I don't have this divisive stuff going on where I'm just playing to one type of person.
So I do want to stick to my comment. You do not feel that you giving blowjobs to men openly on the internet is negatively impacting your family members.
I don't. They're not looking.
And you think it
Ah!
would be way harsher if they had to deal with somebody who said men that walk into brothels are perverse. That would be the real trauma for a child.
No. I mean, I'm kind of wondering where you're going with this because
Well, you
it's not
answered back to
damaging.
me saying it. Well, your kids are going to have to deal with the fact that you said men that walk into brothels are
You
perverse.
got triggered.
Yes, I want my kids to deal with that fact.
No.
because I believe
no.
it is
It-
a
Had
fact.
you, any of the false narrative stuff that's being portrayed that you've been accused of having committed, that could potentially be. I mean, you're very provocative. So some of your stances could end up being problematic for your children later on, and your pride profile to boot. But no, to answer your question, me sucking a on Twitter has not been negative for my family.
And you
period.
wouldn't call that provocative.
Well, it's incredibly provocative, right? In a pro-social way, not like a hater way.
Okay.
right?
Yeah. So your website, you offer a ton of services to men. You obviously, as you said, you market hard on the internet. You offer couples sessions. I mean, you have a ton of stuff that's on your website. You can talk through it, the things that you offer on Twitter, if you'd like to. Just kind of say what are some of the things that you do. It's a lot of Valentine's specials. Come down a lot of in Nevada.
Yeah, yeah. We do specials and
Pegging.
pegging's an interesting one. Not everybody has to do it. So here's the deal. We're independent contractors. So we are in charge of our business, the marketing and all aspects of it. We have bookkeepers, we have accountants, we have assistants, and we decide what we're going to do. And some ladies will say, I want to do that because I can charge more to do that. And it's very fascinating when somebody chooses to partake in some of these kinks and fetishes. I know that you'd implied that maybe that on the whatever podcast that some of these kinks and fetishes basically to you equate to mental illness, but I wouldn't say so, especially knowing the people and why they might want what they want. I know a gentleman that had a head injury early on. I know, right?
Head injury.
Right. No, he's a brilliant guy. He's in the finance
Nothing's wrong with
industry.
him, but he had a head injury and
Well,
then came to see me.
He'll square your portfolio away just like that. Didn't affect his math. But what ended up happening, he can't feel certain things. Certain things are number down there, genitalia wise. So he'll want you to do some things that are a little bit more rough around the edges so he can feel, and he can kind of psych himself out and get himself to an orgasm. He's had to learn to do that. But if somebody who's a little bit more sheltered and closed-minded, right of center might look at that and say, what a freak, what a perverse freak. And it's like, no, I understand why he wants what he wants. I understand his flavor. I understand him as a human being.
Again, you're relying on exceptions and not the rules, the people that are seeing you. I think it's probably a rare exception that you have someone who needs to troubleshoot because of injury that they had versus the average person that's seeing you, which
It's
is
a
probably
complex gamut.
just
It is a complex gamut.
okay.
Each individual is very different and unique.
Okay.
And they're not all coming because of sex addiction. That some of them are hobbyists.
The October 15th tax deadline has just passed, and if you haven't filed, excruciating. That's why you need to check out Say as a track record of success.
There's so many.
So whether you're looking at a $10,000 or a $1 million tax debt, a whole decade, they're expert attorneys. Don't let tax debt control your network. US the whatever podcast, you made it seem like you were just a sex therapist, but then when we go through your Twitter feed, it's very obvious that you're still
busting that
I'd
thing
say you're
wide
also a
open.
porn star. I think
Exactly.
that's a fair categorization if you're putting sex videos up on Twitter. You're
So
also
you're not a
still a
sex
prostitute.
therapist.
I know on
You
the
just
whatever
a-
podcast you said you didn't like that term. It was old.
A
so you preferred
worker.
a newer
Well,
term.
that's totally fine with me. Honestly,
You ain't
I'm
even
totally
a
fine. You guys,
therapist.
even the derogatory terms, we use them as dirty talk. So turn us on. So whatever you're going to throw at me and say, that's
no,
fine.
I'm just using the only word I know. I mean, a prostitute.
Sex workers are kind of becoming like the trendy thing to say
Okay.
over the others, but to each, whatever you want to term
It
it.
means the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make myself out to be anything. I really didn't get that much talk time to express myself and didn't choose to really open up on that platform. So thank you again. But I do the whole gamut. So I do like the in-person sessions. And then I just now started doing really the porn. And the reason why is when Dennis Hoff passed away, he was our marketing engine. And they kind of fell off. And you've got to stay relevant. Netflix has come to us, but the madam didn't really want to do something because we thought, we could put together, a series that would be really awesome. And she said no. So I started doing porn as a show what dynamic for marketing. And then so people would go and see me, and it would be kind of funny because I've always done more high-end in the past, more high-end conservative photo shoots. So they thought I was the girlfriend experience, which is more down to earth, a little bit more vanilla. And then they go and they see me and they say, wait a minute, your skill set in the sex industry, in the world of sex is way beyond just simply kissing and making love, if you will. You do a lot of different things. And now I know that you do this particular kind of interesting kink, and I'd like to try that.
Mhm. I would like to know, honestly, if you would want your son to marry someone like you.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. It depends on the person. He,
No, you. I'm asking.
yeah,
She
no, I'm
said
telling you, I'm
you.
telling you, yes.
Would you want your son marry somebody like
Yes.
you?
Why would I tell him to reject and deny? I've even spoken with him if he ever wanted to partake. You must always be respectful, and this is how you would go about it if you wanted to partake. There's been traditional high school sweeties of him that are more right of center that weren't really nice. They were kind of toxic, not so nice ladies. So it's not going to be like this label thing of, okay, what does she do? Where does she work? Who is she? Oh, she's a sex worker.
Some
Let's
call
just-
it labels, some
let's-
call it standards. People want obviously their children. I definitely have standards for the sort of women that I would want my son to grow up and to marry, and I would definitely have standards for the sort of men that I would want my daughter to grow up and marry. So I don't think we should categorize having standards as being labels,
Mhm.
and a lot of times parents are selfless, and I think that's kind of where I'm trying to get to in understanding you, because you don't think it impacts him for you to put porn on the internet. You don't think it impacts him for you to be advocating, do you want to do naughty cosplay? Do you want me to dominate you, baby? It doesn't seem like you're coming from a place of selflessness. Like I would almost rather you say, like, obviously this impacts him. I weigh the pros and the cons, but you're just like, no, everything I do is great. Everything I do is amazing. Like, he loves it. Yeah, I'm amazing. And now when I ask you a question about, would you want him to marry someone like you? It's like, no, that's fine. And so I'm reading that, I hope, as a defense mechanism and not the truth, because then it makes me wonder, how much you love your son, because I would want my children to do better than me, right? I want my kids to do better than me, better than I did when I was a kid. And you just seem like, I'm doing great. I hope my kid marries someone just like me, and that he
No,
enjoys
I
the porn
didn't. Did
content
I
on the
say
internet.
that I hope that he marries someone
I said,
just
would you
like
want?
me?
And you said,
Literally said that.
I said to each his own. If he were to come to me and say, I've met somebody and they're very special to me and they mean the world to me and I want you to meet her, and she is a sex worker, I would kind of be surprised, because I know how he is and he's not really that way. I know what he wants. And he wants one person to settle down with. But I'd be like, okay, well, this is interesting. You're really branching out. And I would just want to meet her, and I would want to learn more, and I would want to find out what's going on with where he's at, and what kind of dynamic do we have going on here? What kind of, who is this lady? I want to know this lady, because there's brilliant ladies, including myself, in the industry. And I wouldn't count somebody out because of that. That would be completely hypocritical. Now, why am I saying that my Twitter feed, number one, my Twitter feed is like totally shadow banned half the time, but that stuff is very sensitive. You've got to go and dig up and find me.
It was 10 tweets down.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I didn't do hours on your Twitter feed. I just
My
scrolled,
family.
and I
10
scrolled
tweets
this
down.
morning, and I promise you,
Okay.
it's
Well, that
within
makes
20
me feel
tweets.
better. 'Cause I'm always like,
It's within 20 tweets down. It is graphic.
Dumping on me.
It is not
That's
being
funny.
censored at
Okay.
all.
That's
It was
okay.
right there.
hilarious.
Maybe my settings are wrong, but it was not. I did not do a deep dive on your
In
Twitter.
other words,
so maybe it's
it's out
because,
there.
because I am being honest and I am being authentic. And in Boise, Idaho, my family and my son, we've lived kind of a much more simpler, they've lived a much more simpler life than I comparatively. They're not coming in and traveling. They're not marketing anything on websites or the internet. And he's not even down with the internet. He doesn't like Instagram, and he doesn't like any of that stuff. So he's seldom on it. They're not looking for my stuff. They're not looking to see me and see what I'm doing. I'm a different name. I'm a different person. I mean, I'm still the same person, but do you know what I mean? Like, I'm a different role. So it's about family. It's about grassroots, same stuff, getting together, having
What she's
dinners.
telling you
We're
is
not
that
talking
it was
about my
really
work.
way too easy
So
to
my work
find
hasn't
you on the internet.
even really entered. Just now I've had to tell him because of the publicity, the tabloid. So I wanted to make him aware of what was going
So,
on.
You're never going to tell him?
And he loves me no matter what. And so that's so important to me, Candace.
Yes, of
This
course,
lady's so full
and
of
that
it.
is
So
what
full
love
of it.
is. I
She's
appreciate that
full
he
of it,
loves you no
bro. I
matter
ain't gonna
what.
lie.
I think what I'm trying to get to is that I think people that are watching this are again going to question how honest you're being, because
Full of it.
Sure.
I have
that's fine.
sat down with sex workers before and they're
Full of
honest
it.
about what the industry is. Even people that don't want to get out of the industry are honest about what the industry is. Right now, you are painting a picture of no downfalls. It's great. I can control my own schedule. I can decide what clients I want. I get tons of money from what I get to do. I get to spend more time with my kid. I can post pornographic stuff onto a different name. It doesn't impact my kid. I know that I can marry and I can date someone
Very
if I
unrealistic.
want to. When that moment arrives to me, my career is not going to impact it.
Very
That doesn't
unrealistic.
read as honest. It doesn't,
Exactly.
And I think that it takes a simple measure of common sense to know that's not honest. Whereas you have other people who will sit down and say, yeah, you know what? I've had a person abuse me in this circumstance. There's a lot of drugs and drinking in this industry. We know that that's a fact, obviously, because if you follow any of the human sex trafficking channels that talk about, the women that are sex trafficked and then forced to do pornography, you learn really
sex
my
trafficking.
my strong aversion to pornography didn't arrive overnight. I mean,
Mhm.
it wasn't throughout my entire life, rather.
Yeah.
When I sat down with the founder, Tim Ballard, of a sex trafficking organization, and he described to me that America was creating a demand for pornography, which was the reason why in places like Haiti, when they have a hurricane, a bunch of kids go missing and
It's
they're
terrible.
sex trafficked.
But
It
you're,
is
you're
true.
comparing apples
And they
to
are
oranges.
finding, I'm not comparing apples to oranges. I'm telling you
are.
where you can find the apples and the oranges. They find these children, his charity. They find
can't
these children.
put
Please let me
legal
finish
sex-
this. This is important.
Okay.
They find these children on these websites. So
Children.
pimps, they, once they're older,
Pimps.
whatever it is, that's totally fine. But the point is that this is the same sex industry. It's the same place that I can find a video of you. There might be a video of a person who didn't want to be put onto the internet. They recently found a young woman who was taken at a basketball game in broad daylight. They found her on a sex website, the same website that you might be willingly. So my aversion to pornography, my aversion to what it does came with my understanding of how intertwined it was. Not consciously, do I believe that you want to be intertwined with the human sex trafficking industry? No. Do I believe that the average man that goes on to Pornhub.com wants to support human sex trafficking? No. But the truth is that because of this demand that's being created, you have these sickos and these perverts and these pimps and these people who will snatch children that are taking them because they know that they can earn a profit off of these people. Again, these are real conversations to have around your industry, and you seem very unwilling to have them, despite the fact
are
that
you
I think
suggesting that like it totally make porn and expressions of human sexuality on camera completely illegal and never to be seen? Because that's not going to work.
No.
And I don't even think that's the
I
right
don't
answer.
think that's going to work.
And I
You
and I
just-
really
she's-
don't like human trafficking. And I think
again,
it's disgusting. It's not even
glossing.
legal. But to lump it in the same boat,
is, but it
to
is
put
in
it in the
it is
same
in the
boat
same
as
boat,
like
unfortunately.
Nevada's controlled. The government controls it and organizes it, and
Doesn't
it's
mean that
freaking
it doesn't
brilliant. And to
yeah.
put that in the same boat as illegal human trafficking with children is again, to me, that's like, false narratives are coming
Again,
our
it's
way.
you just not wanting to look at what's happening, right?
No,
So
no,
that's what
I have
say.
cops.
I am not
I have
saying
cop
that you,
clients that are saying decriminalize it. That's not the same thing as what you girls do. We like what Nevada does.
it's the same website that I can go to for both, is what I'm trying to explain to you. And that is something that I learned as an adult. It wasn't something that I knew. But it completely transformed my opinion of the
Well,
porn
I
industry when I
disagree
realized,
with
not disagreeing,
those
it's a
things.
fact. They're finding these young
no.
women
Agreeing
on
with you.
websites like Pornhub. Of course you do. And that's
Right.
why I'm not putting this on any
Yeah.
porn star. I want to be clear.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that a person that willingly does pornography is doing this because they are endorsing human sex trafficking.
Yes,
But
yes.
for me, the industry
Yeah.
became unconscionable once I was educated about human sex trafficking, understanding that the majority of these victims are being found on websites alongside these, this girl made this profile because she wants to be there. This girl actually didn't make this profile because she wanted to be there, but because she was sex trafficked from an Eastern European country. She was sex trafficked, from North Korea. So once I understood that, I wanted to be a voice against pornography and against this industry. Now, to answer your question that you just asked, which I think is super important, about how you deal with it. I think, well, the first way that you deal with any problem is with truth. And that's why I'm pushing you on this narrative. And I think it's an unhealthy narrative because porn stars don't even spin this narrative that the industry is great and the industry is amazing. They talk about,
It's my truth of my experiences.
but you have young women that are around you in these brothels. You've never heard a bad story. Everything's just been
No.
amazing.
Some of these girls have issues, you know.
Okay.
Drug issues, substance
Yeah, I
abuse
mean, some
issues.
girls might have issues, or yeah, absolutely. But
you
that's
don't
across
pay
the
no
board.
mind.
But that's
I mean, go
important
into
to
the
talk
finance
about.
industry, and then you'll find all these people on coke, and you're like, what? You know.
That's not even
But yeah,
remotely the
no,
same
there's
thing.
problems in every single industry.
That's not even
But
remotely
there's a
the
ton
same
of
thing.
brilliant girls in the industry that have degrees, and they don't like the misrepresentation. They don't like the sick, sad world. Oh, we're just damaged, or all these girls have drug problems, and there's so many negative narratives that are being put forth that, you know, like when you did your investigative journalism on the Avery case, you know, you could go do that with these brothels and really get a better viewpoint of the girls that are being empowered, and it's catapulting them into other things where they go and they open up a bed and breakfast or a pet hotel in Chicago or my art studio or what have you, my Costa Rica stuff.
I am sure.
How it's building up women, and then you can go find the ones that it's not good for them. That is damaging for them.
Mhm. I think it's
Right? I
important-
mean,
yeah.
so I think we are in agreement on that.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I am sure that when people have money, they have more capability, and so I understand the trade-off.
Well, maybe they like the sex. I like sex.
I think that you got into it because you liked money, and I think
I like
you
money,
went
and I like-
back to it
yeah.
because you liked
Like
money.
money,
And I think that we
exactly.
kind of
Well, I
figured that out very
I-
early on in this
yeah.
conversation.
To the nature.
I
And
like
so
the
now
sex.
you're saying I do because I like sex.
I like both.
But
I
no
like
woman
both.
is jumping into
It's
that
what you're
industry because
comfortable
they're
with.
like, wow, I just love sex so much. Wouldn't it be amazing
Versus
to do
what
it
you
full time
know
with multiple
versus the
strangers?
potential that you
I
know you
cannot
can do
allow you
better
to
It's
with.
kind
pretend
of
that that's
exciting.
ever been a reason why somebody jumped into
she's
the
full of it.
industry.
Oh, it's exciting.
She's full of it. This
So
lady's full
some
of it.
people who don't want just one partner, like for some people, Candace, being with one person the rest of their lives, it's like, that's going to kill me. Oh my gosh. Like, that's so boring, right? That's why there's people with alternative lifestyles that shouldn't be judged. And I get excited and I get boy crazy. And so I have a lot of fitness guys coming at me. I have younger guys coming at me, and it really gets me excited. I get elated. I feel alive. So I get a lot of emotional positivity from doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And after a really good session with people, it feels pretty amazing, to be honest with you. And I do like ladies. So I mean, it provides for these fun opportunities for me to get to go have a sexual adventure, if you will, that I wouldn't otherwise have just sitting at home in Boise, Idaho. I mean, you can go find those kind of things, but I'm not a bar person. You know.
Imagine what it would be like to own a piece of art history like Masterworks, valuable art pieces. World are transformed. Why do I need to invest in a tangible asset with a limited supply? This increased Masterworks has acquired over up to 35 wait list, but you Candace. Important Regulation A disclosure would offer that I think that your clientele list is an examination of the weakest men that our society has to offer.
Wow.
The police officers, the
that's my
federal
belief.
agent that
Yeah,
that
men
I
that
see.
cannot control their impulses
Okay.
are weak.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my belief.
Well, I just
Without question. And strong men are men that have impulses, and yet they keep those impulses in check. And those are
So-
the most desirable men that are in our society.
any man that wants casual sex is bad to you because that's basically what they're wanting.
They're paying.
Yeah,
They're
and
paying for you. They're going to a brothel with
'Cause
a
they got
stranger.
money.
rather than drinking a girl into it at the bar, which is what we typically see.
Well, I don't think most men are date rapists either. I think a real man
Oh,
is gonna
that's the
walk up.
culture.
I think that's what
Hey,
allows
babe,
me
let
to
me buy you
know.
a drink. And I
That's
mean,
what allows me to
kinda-
know that you only see the worst parts of
I've
our
been in it.
society. Yeah.
Haven't you? I mean, have you?
Well, you were
did
married
you
to
ever
an
go?
alcohol. You said you were married to an alcoholic, right? So
Well, I
think-
didn't even know he was
I
at the
think
time,
that
but
your
yeah.
opinions are being colored by your experiences on a day-to-day basis.
No,
You
going
are
to the
seeing-
bar, being involved, going out to the bar as a youngin', getting there and having guys, come up and hit on you and want to
Yeah.
buy you drinks and then keep wanting to buy you drinks because they're trying to take you home.
Yeah, but also you have men that just come up and talk to you and they're not trying to get you drunk. I mean, this is how I ended up married.
Yeah.
Nobody was trying to ply me with liquor. Somebody wanted to have a conversation with me about things that we agreed on.
And
And
like I
that's
said,
that's an example of a real man.
Yeah.
So I
those
don't I
guys are
think
coming
the
too.
weakest of men are the ones who walk into a brothel Perhaps weaker than them are men that attempt to date rape someone, which is what you're basically describing. A typical college scene of everybody's drunk and having a good time. But the whole point is men grow up. You learn to have conversations with women. You learn how to ask a woman on a date.
Okay.
And you don't need drugs or sex or money that would be better spent somewhere outside of a brothel to do it. You actually, it's sad if you, as a man, have to pay for sex.
So not really. Okay,
I
so
think it's
let's
really
phrase it
sad.
this way. There's hot guys coming in all the
I didn't
time.
ask
with
you how they look.
good
There
money.
are weak hot
Okay,
men.
so
They're
a
good-looking
guy.
men
All
that
right,
are
so I'm going to
incredibly
put it
weak.
to you like this. So let's look at this. So we've got this group of guys here, and they're like, I want to go out and have a good time, hoping I get laid. Let's go to the club. And then we got these guys, and they're like, well, we could go to this world famous bunny ranch. There's all these hot pros. They're really skilled. They're getting tested. We're wearing condoms, and we're going to be helping them out. And to me, it's a gentlemanly gesture. If you're wanting to get it on with me and you don't want a relationship, what? You know what I mean? Like, come on. So them coming in and saying, hey, let me put some money on your books, pay your bills, and let's go have a safe encounter in a controlled environment. Shame on you, Olivia Bentley, but this stuff going on over here at the bar,
Well, the first thing I would say is false dichotomy. There's more options for men. The thing that I would say is that the most pathetic thing that a man can do is to pay for sex.
really.
And I think that men know that. It is why when men are porn addicts, it is something that they are shameful of. It's something that they hide.
They're
Don't
not
watch
paying.
porn in public. You're not going to see a person at work just on their phone, watching pornography, or someone that's on a train watching pornography. It's something that you hide because men know it's shameful. Men know that it is a form of weakness. Otherwise, they would do it out in the open.
I think the weak shame people that are open and honest about human sexuality. That's what I tend to see.
I don't think that it's normal human sexuality to walk into a brothel and pay for sex. I think men and women come together naturally. I don't think that even if you look at biology, if you look at the history of humanity, if you look at animals, that you have to pay to have sex. It doesn't have to be like, here's some food so that you will have sex with me. That's just not how it works.
Why has sex workers been? Why is it the oldest profession in the world then? Isn't that interesting?
Well, we call it the oldest profession in the world. Yeah. And I think it's something that's never going to go away. And I think that's why when you said to me, how do you solve something like this permanently? And first, I think by fostering a conversation of honesty, I think that it's actually getting worse, not better, that we're seeing more categories of this sort of perversity with the onset of OnlyFans, social media, and the internet. It has actually made men fall deeper into porn addiction, because that's actually what it is. It's pornography addiction. And there was less incidences of it when there wasn't so much media and there wasn't so much exposure, which provided for men to be able to focus more. Like the examples of stronger men, I think, exist as a relic of the past, really, because there wasn't so many options being given to them all the time.
What do you say to the men that tell me you're going to have to pay for it one way or the other? Having a wife is way more expensive. What do we say to them when they say that?
That's trendy. It's a trendy thing that people
you
say.
should
That's
be
something
paid.
that
one way or
people,
other.
yeah. Well, it's kind of
Well, I would
trendy when
say,
people say
yeah,
that it's
I
the
would-
most
I-
pathetic, weak thing to have to pay a woman.
No, I don't think
'Cause
I don't think that's a common
don't-
phrase anybody said. I definitely didn't take it from anybody.
Well, it's
but the one that you're saying is a common one. You're going to have to pay for
a lot of
it.
haters will say
Yeah.
that.
I would remind them that having a wife and a child and a family
What's
is
point
the
of having a
greatest
family
blessing
then?
in the entire
Or
world. If
being
you're
married?
talking about paying because you have
you're
bills
gonna-
and you
you
are
say you're
paying,
gonna have to
as we
pay
are right
for
now, as we
the
consider what school we're
services,
going
if
to
you're
put
gonna have to pay
our
for a
children
woman
into, and you're paying for daycare
I mean,
for your
if you
children.
really think about
There's
it,
nothing. I mean,
we're
I would spend that money 80 million times over for the love and the joy and the
theoretically
warmth
speaking,
and
we all
the
pay
security that my family
for
provides me. It is the
women
most aspirational thing that you can pay for.
in
Do you think it's
a
okay for
certain
other
way.
people to have different viewpoints and to have different realities and maybe something else feels good to them and is right for them that to you seems foreign?
I think it's totally fine for people to live their lives in the way that they would like to live their lives. But what I require is that people speak honestly about that. And I do not think that any person who is having sex with 10 men, different men per a day, is a happy person. I just
Facts.
don't. I refuse to
Your
believe
soul's
that
not right.
is happiness achieved. Do I believe that there are
Soul's
some
not right.
people who genuinely don't want family, who don't want to have a husband, who don't want to have kids? Yeah, they're the exception. biology gets it wrong sometimes. Sometimes genetics just don't get it right, and people don't aspire to things that you would think they have a biological proclivity for.
Mhm.
But that's the exception, not the rule. And I'm certainly not going to try to force someone who says, I hate children, I don't want children. That's not you. I'm just giving an
Right.
example
No, I know.
to, force
Yeah.
them into a lifestyle that they're obviously,
They
know,
won't be happy.
they won't be happy in.
Right.
But what I have trouble with is trying to normalize the abnormal. And I think that, as I said, in the circumstance of a woman, especially a woman, having sex with 10 different partners in one day,
That's a little much.
I think you both
don't.
said 5 to 10 clients in a day.
Well, after the HBO special, things were crazy. And that place was on fire. And people were just all over the place. And it was one of these things. But honestly, what happened is, so with women, you get more orgasmic the more you go. You go and you get addicted. You get addicted. You go and you have this rush, and you might have an orgasm, and then you make all this money, and it's like, oh my goodness, and if you have fun, and you enjoyed your time, then you're right back in the shower and you're getting all ready and you're going right back out to meet someone new. So that's kind of what happens. You
So you're
get
giving
all
credence to what
woohoo,
I
you
said
get all
earlier.
wild. Yeah, you get like, oh my goodness gracious, I
That's
want to get
addiction.
going here, and you're excited about it.
Money addiction.
That's credence to what I was saying earlier. That there's an element of this that is addicting. It's an addiction.
It can be addicting,
Yeah. And
So
addictions are not good to lean into,
Well,
whether it's drinking or whether it's sex.
if you like your
Addictions-
job and that's what you're doing for work and that's
like
the
your
money and you
alcohol,
like the
if
sex,
you like your alcohol,
it's not affecting me negatively. Drinking alcohol and having an alcohol addiction and then doing this for work, to me, it's athleticism. I mean, we're like in motion, you know what I mean? It's like, so for me, it's a physical activity.
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of like a Charlie Sheen interview when he was like, high on crack cocaine, talking about how he's got tiger blood and he's, this is his special mechanism and this works for him. You're talking about an addiction. You're saying, well, I like it, so it's fine.
I like it.
Most
Yeah, I
people
don't-
do
I-
tend
and
to
I
like
don't-
their addictions. That's why they're addicted to them. A
Yeah.
cokehead likes cocaine. A sex addict likes sex.
But
and
I'm
it's kind of
not- I'm not a
implied.
sex addict, though.
But
I'm
you
not.
just said there's an element that's addicting. You said you get on, you're turned
Exactly.
on,
I think
you
it
want to
just
see the next
explained
one.
that
What
to
you
me.
No,
described
Yeah,
it.
I
it's
like
sex
what I
addiction.
do, but I'm naturally
You just
introverted,
contradicted
believe it or
yourself
not,
twice.
and
Matter of fact,
I'm
you
not like that. I'm
contradicted
not wired
yourself
like
this
that.
whole
Like I
entire
haven't
interview.
even had sex like all
And been
week.
triggered.
That's totally fine. I've been so busy training. I'm not, I haven't even had time to think of it.
Mhm.
So I'm not one of those that I'm constantly thinking of getting it on. And when I'm home, I don't. I'm so busy. I'm going to the gym and there's a lot of hot guys at the gym. I don't hit on them. I'm in my zone. I build community there. So I'm not out romping around and going all crazy. So it's not that. It's just, to speak of the times when we had a lot of people coming in, that would be the dynamic. And it was crazy. But we were making money hand over fist.
Which comes down to the fact that it does always boil down to
To the
money.
money.
Yeah.
It does, because we will create, our personas are real wild and stuff, right?
Mhm.
But this is our means of living respectively.
Mhm.
So that doesn't mean, because sometimes like a guy might have the perception, that lady is a complete nympho. I just got to get a few drinks in her and she's mine for free. Do you know what we're charging? We're charging a lot. I did a $25,000 24-hour party, gave half to Dayton High School. The high schools will call in and they'll need help. So we're kind of the community backbone in ways for fundraisers, but the wrestling team needed mats. So they called in. I did a 24-hour date with a regular, gave them half, and they got their mats. And then the marching band actually approached Dennis at a restaurant and they said, look, we just won a prestigious trip over to DC. We can't afford the outfits. And he was so cool. And he drummed us all up and we did a fundraiser and we got him outfits.
Community center.
So, I mean, my point on that is like, we charge a lot of money. So therein lies like the
Buying
distinction. Like, yeah, we do enjoy what we
Buying
do, but we're not
coochie
these
is
crazy nymphos like out
one
there
of
running
the
around.
Yeah, I
most-
This
wouldn't-
is money.
I wouldn't want to sell my
it's
body
up
for
there
money.
as
And
one
I
of
think
the
that
cardinal
these are,
sins to me.
I guess, some differences between you
Yes.
and I and sex workers that we're never going to get over, because there is no price tag that somebody could put on my self-respect, and counting $25,000 at the end of the day, knowing that I had to sleep with multiple men to get it, would be something that I wouldn't be able to like lay my pillow at night, and I wouldn't be able to look at my daughter. I wouldn't be able to look at my son.
Oh,
And
sorry.
so, yeah, it's
She said,
different, I think, for everybody. But
sorry.
in closing,
What is your love language, Candace?
what do you mean by that?
Your love language. Like, are you physical? Are you acts of service? Are you verbal?
Oh, this is like a
love
book, right?
language.
I
You know,
I
people-
actually probably say all of them.
Okay.
hmm
Mine is acts of service and physical. So it's kind of like it truly is. And sometimes I've got to remind myself, hey, you've got to do the verbal too. Some men want the verbal. So even though I don't need all that verbal reassurance,
Mhm.
I have to learn to do it, right? But physical and acts of service is mine, and it kind of makes sense with how I demonstrate and express love. But when the one comes, I am open for it.
I hope he comes. What do you hope that young women learned from you in this discussion?
Oh boy.
Just to get a more leveled perspective on it. I'm not trying to advocate for people to jump in. It is tough work. You're having to, learn men and manage men, right? But just to know that, we are smart human beings. We are respectable businesswomen. We deserve respect. So let's can the harsh judgments. And I appreciate that we were able to open it up and get deeper into the discussion.
And I want to be clear that I don't think that sex workers deserve disrespect unless they're being disrespectful, which I think was an example of on the Whatever podcast of people that were intentionally trying to be disrespectful.
Yes.
But as I said at the end of the Whatever podcast, I will say here is that I do think that they are worthy of prayers, and I hope that they know that there is a lot more that they have to offer in society than their bodies, and there are other ways to find success. And of course, praying for them is because I do believe that the person that you need to find isn't necessarily a husband, but might be Jesus Christ. So I'm grateful for you for spending this time to talk, and that this has been a respectful dialogue, and that we were able to continue it from the Whatever podcast and have a one-on-one dialogue, because I do think that conversation and letting people hear different perspectives is the only way that they can kind of get to a truth, like hearing everything and deciding what it is that they want from their lives. So I just want to, again, thank you, Olivia, for coming on.
Thank you.
Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like leaving your keys in your car while you run into the gas station for a snack. Most of the time, you'll probably be fine, but what if you came back to see that someone was driving off with your car? Every time you connect to an unencrypted network in cafes, hotels, or airports, your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can access and steal your personal data, such as your passwords or your financial details. And it doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone either. Anyone can do it with some cheap hardware. That's why you need ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so that hackers can't steal your sensitive data. And I love how easy ExpressVPN is to use. You just fire up the app, click one button, and you're protected. So secure your online data today at expressvpn.com/Candace. That's expressvpn.com/Candace, and you'll get 3 months free. Visit expressvpn.com/Candace to learn more. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Obviously, we'll be looking at the comments. I would tell you where to find her, but I'm anti-porn, so I'm not going to advocate for any of her handles at all. You're going to have to pursue her on your own, you guys.
Pick rocks.
Well, we'll see you on the next episode.
Anyways, y'all, man, that is the end of the stream. I kind of went over the time I was supposed to go over. I said I was going to be on it for 1 hour, but I've somehow still stretched this all the way to 2 hours. Everybody who is, we still got maybe, what is that? Still got a couple hours left before Thanksgiving is over. Make sure you get some more turkey in your system. Make sure you get some more cake, pie, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, so on and so forth in your system, and just be thankful that you have made it this far in 2023. Hopefully we all make it to see 2024. And yeah, man, that's all I got left. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's night, and I am out of here. I gotta see how I'm gonna turn this thing off because my mouse stopped working. Let me see how I'm gonna do this.